You're live.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. And of course, the approval of the agenda and order of business. Anybody have anything to add? I don't. Gary?
Just want to talk about the fire committee for, I'm going to take about 2 minutes.
Okay. Anything else? Somebody want to remove it as an action?
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. No public input, so we're on to the minutes of the previous meeting, June the 30th. Any errors or omissions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. No committee reports that I'm aware of.
The warden, if it's appropriate, I could give just a brief update on the Village Planning Advisory Committee meeting.
Yeah, come on up.
Okay. This will be very quick. So we had a meeting of the VPAC this week, and there are basically two items to. In short, there was another discussion around a heritage conservation district that's been discussed kind of since we've been talking about the plan review. So we had that discussion again and talked sort of about what would be involved with that, the level of detail and planning, and also talked about the ongoing FBM architectural study that's going on, and that potentially could be an element out of the recommendations from that report. So the committee agreed to basically table the discussion until pending the final report from FBM, and then we also were talking about if that still felt that it may be something to look into, it would be after village plan. It could be a recommendation to follow village plan review, but it would not hold a significant amount of work to try to do both at once. So I think we had a good discussion there, and I think there was consensus around that. And the other one that I just wanted to mention to council, because I know there's been a discussion around sort of the end of August and council schedules. We're looking to hold not a council workshop, but a public engagement workshop. It should be the August 18th, so that's a Thursday. We're going to do it at the Legion, and the subject, it's part of the village plan review, but the subject is going to be the Highway 3 area. So basically within the village, but sort of outside of the village core. So it's the area that the FBM study is not looking at. They're looking at the core and the peninsulas, I should say. And so this will kind of cover the rest, not everything else, but it'll be the Highway 3 area, which was of course part of the Highway 3 streetscape plan in 2011. And I think there's be changed. Exactly. So that's what we're working through now. So I've been working with our summer student, John, to prepare some of those materials. And we gave VPAC sort of a preview of what we're working on, but we're still developing those. So I just wanted to make that aware for everybody. August 18th, you're more than welcome to go. Yeah.
Question. So the Highway 3 area, are you going as far as
Robinson's Corner?
No, this will be just within the village. So it'll basically stop just before the mall, sort of,
okay.
and then the Piglet Road on the other side. So we're going to start advertising for that next week. So we just wanted to make council aware before the ads started to go up, just in case you get any questions. We'll do a voices and choices post as well, and you can of course direct anybody to us if they have questions on it. So yeah, any questions?
You have time and place for that meeting?
It'll be at the Legion. We have just been, let me see here. So it'll be similar to other workshops. It'll be 2 sessions. So we'll do an afternoon, 2:30 to 4, and then an evening from 6:30 to 8. It'll be the same material covered. And we'll send that out to council as well once you confirm it. It's just been in the last day or two that we've been getting those dates worked out.
Yeah. I don't check this email every day. I sometimes miss those when they're not in advance. So I don't know well in advance or put it in my calendar.
Right.
As opposed to getting it before.
Sure. Yeah. So August 18th.
And 2 and
2:30 to 4, and then 6:30 to 8.
2:30.
I don't know how you feel about it, but are the dates, should it be later in the fall maybe? Are you worried about not enough engagement at that time of year, or is that?
Historically, council has always directed us to do engagement during the summer for the village to capture the summer residents.
Okay.
So we were trying to squeeze it in actually within August, but That, of course.
No, that's okay,
Yeah, yeah.
that makes sense,
Yeah, so that was intentional, I guess.
Makes sense,
We,
yeah.
we were hoping actually that sort of the middle of August should be kind of the peak
Yeah.
when there's a lot of folks around, so hopefully, hopefully they'll come out and engage with us.
So how will you advertise that?
So we haven't fully determined everything, but we'll do sort of the standard approach that we did for the FBM. So we're gonna be doing postering that we'll put up around the village. We'll put ads in the newspaper. We'll do our municipal social media, municipal website. We're also going to do a direct mail out to every property owner within the area that we're covering here. If there's anything else you can do.
That's, yeah.
We're not gonna mail to everybody in the village, but we will cover all basically the properties within the subject area. So, because when we thought about that too, we wouldn't want it to have a lot of folks from outside that area and nobody from inside the area dictating. This will also involve, we'll get the business community that's within the highway commercial zone, illuminated signage, all those kinds of issues that we've been talking about as well, so.
So will you advise village commission, is that something you would advise them on?
We
Just right now.
Yeah, we can, I'm not, yeah, absolutely. We can- I'll let you know. Yeah,
May not be a bad idea.
no, absolutely. If you'd like us to send
I'm
it
just
direct.
asking what your process is, mainly, I'm not sure.
So I just explained to you what it was, so I
Yeah,
had,
but though you named everybody that's notified that, so yet, so village commission hasn't, and marked out, it wouldn't be a normal course. I can.
if we're talking about, so,
Is it something we should, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Should we be notifying them?
sure, yeah, I have no, that's a great suggestion, yeah.
But if it is better coming from me, I can do it, so whatever you think.
I'm gonna make a note
Just do
to
it.
email Vartada and the village commission, yeah,
Just
and
so-
if you want to mention it as well, that's great.
Yeah, just so that they can feel that they've been included.
I'll add the Chester merchants as well to that.
Yeah, because sometimes we'll get the comment that they didn't get notification and didn't know about it, and I'd like to sort of shut that down.
Sure, yeah. If there's anybody else, just let us know and we'll add them to the list.
Why, where someone mentioned merchants, I'm not sure it's a different, just the merchants.
Yeah, okay, got those.
Yes, I
three.
agree with that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Anything else? Yeah, thanks, Darcy.
Thank you.
See you in a bit. Okay, so it's not 9:15 yet, so we'll move on to 7.1. Infrastructure Development Policy, second and final notice. Unless there's somebody who has a change that they want to make to that. All we need is a motion to
Yeah.
adopt.
The only change we made was the direction to change 1.2B, and we added the words, water supply treatment and distribution systems, and then we took out the reference to active transportation. There's one spelling mistake there. Which one? 2.4 for the growth, yeah.
So we'll correct the spelling mistake.
We'll fix the spelling mistake.
So it's a motion to adopt. All
Motion to adopt the policy.
seconder,
Second.
discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, 7.2 NSFM membership survey draft responses. That's basically trying to cover off what we had said the last go around.
Yeah, I will leave it up to council how you'd like me to run through this. We can run through each one individually, but I think I provided the draft answers. We've gone through them once, and so I think I captured everything. So how would you like me to proceed?
I just want to ask anybody if they have any issues with the way it's drafted at the moment.
No, I felt it was captured
What we
quite
said,
well, really. You know, it's that kind of marathon discussion that we had around it.
so then without any further discussion, we'll send it off to you.
Sounds good.
Okay. Community Development Recreation Stanford Lake Water Monitoring Program. for too. Well,
Yeah, so this was essentially, I guess, initiated during our discussion this year around the Fox Point Lake Water Monitoring Committee and the continuation of that program for the 2022 season. And out of that discussion, there was direction from council basically to look at two avenues to talk to Coastal Action about developing a wider program of lake monitoring for the wider municipality. And then also in particular, there was a discussion around getting a monitoring program in place for Stanford Lake in relation to the proposed Chester Hills development that's out there. So
get some baseline information.
exactly, yeah. So we worked with Coastal Action, and it fairly quickly became apparent that due to their staffing levels and the timing, that wider lake monitoring program was just going to be too much of a rush to try to implement it, and they didn't really have the staffing to undertake that this year. So what we plan to do is continue those discussions and bring a draft back to council in hopefully the fall or the winter for approval for a go forward. We had some discussions with them about what might that program look like? Is the objective to hit every lake over a period of 10 years, or is it to have a series of representative lakes that we sample on a more regular basis? So and we're asking them to provide us with some scientific basis for what, from your perspective, Coastal Action makes the most sense to give us a good overall view of lake health in the municipality. And so given that level of detail, it's just going to take a bit more time.
Yeah, Andre.
I'll just say that I don't think that we were expecting to come back with a wider lake program at this time. I think that the discussion was, I think it's fine that you're gonna take some time.
Sort of.
I think that was I
Yeah,
think when we
yeah.
discussed it, I think that it was a future
Right.
discussion, so that's good.
Yeah, so that'll be coming back. But what Coastal Action did do for us was put together a one-year program for Stanford Lake, modeled off of what's going on at Fox Point Lake and Sherbrooke Lake as well. And so that's what we've provided here. The budgeted amount would be $12,988.45 to complete the scope of work as outlined in the attachment. And so, so staff are recommended in favor of this for this one-year program. And then, of course, we can reevaluate this in the winter along potentially with all of our programs to see how they might fit into that larger program, or whether this becomes something we want to continue on a standalone basis.
It's important that before the development takes place, we have baseline, so we understand the impact.
Right.
So even if we don't do it again, and for years,
Exactly, we'll have.
We'll know.
As soon as, yeah.
I guess I look at the budget, 13,000. When will they start that? Like, it won't be August till they start, and they only do it for a month or two. I'm just questioning, I guess, would that be a full season budget, or is that?
Well, yeah, so the budget, so it's a good point. And we are late in the season. So the sampling that they show actually would run from June to September. So we've missed June. I suspect if we got direction today, I would ask them to get a July one and then ask what we're going to do with that extra. Do we do it in October? Do we do more than one a month, like 1.25 tests per month to balance out? Or does the cost come down by one sampling day?
Yeah, we're almost halfway through July, actually.
Yeah, so I think that's a fair point. So I will ask how the timeline will affect the the budget.
So do we want to move forward with it? Was the understand that there will be some adjustments potentially?
Yes, I think we need that.
I think there's, I'd like to know what the adjustments are.
Yeah.
I agree, we need to move forward with it, but I think 6 weeks is quite a bit of testing time and it'd be lucky if we only missed 6 weeks at a time. We tell them yes, and they get it in place to be close to the August, I would think.
So we have a citizen in the back that wants to speak. Does anybody object?
No,
Okay.
Hi, my name's Heather McIntosh. I live on Stanford Lake Road.
maybe you come up to get here.
Where would you like me to?
Yes, I would.
Sure.
Hi, so I live on Stanford Lake Road and I have quite a list of concerns about the proposed development called Chester Hills. The location is a beautiful woodland uphill from Stanford Lake.
Yeah.
The size of it, the density doesn't match anything in the strategic planning document.
At this moment, all we're speaking about is the water
My
test.
specific issue at this moment, and I'm glad to have a chance to address the group. The water quality monitoring of Stanford Lake seemed like a great idea. I was quite pleased to see that concern about the water quality in our neighboring lake is really going to be looked at. So what I'm understanding today is it's going to be delayed.
We expect it to start in August. or
In June,
possibly
in July.
In July.
Yeah, we've missed June, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And I wonder if it would be made available, what kinds of heavy metals, toxins, nitrates would be monitored for. And getting a baseline, I think, will be important because I'm concerned that this development will harm Stanford Lake and the water quality that we all count on.
Yeah, I don't remember specifically what we're testing for, but.
Yeah, we can share with you the details of what they're looking at. Like we said, it's similar to what's done on the other lakes, and it does include sediment sampling for metals, as well as
Algae and.
there algae, and then some of the other like nutrient, like phosphorus and nitrogen and those types of
Things like
things.
nitrates would be important because those do not break down when they run through a rock. They don't break down like when they run through soil. And they are linked to serious health issues for the community and the wells that are down below. So
Well, I can provide you what Coastal Action has provided us, and if you have concerns, I can bring it back to the table. Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So we want to move forward, but we expect some revisions either in the numbers of tests that you're going to do or else in the price.
Yeah, I would think, I mean,
I was gonna say, so I think if you approve that budget, the budget is, that's the maximum amount that would
It may
be
be
spent.
less.
Staff would administer it to achieve the maximum benefit, and it may result in some savings or just a more robust testing program this current year. You could provide direction, but I'm confident that Gareth and Chad would be able to
Or they know more about.
achieve maximum benefit from the budget if you approve that.
And I think it's important that we do it as quickly as possible.
Well, you want that
That's-
basic, you want
Yeah.
that basic testing before anything takes place.
I don't know if it would be helpful if they missed a month or two to do some in the spring, or is that
Well, yeah. you-
possible?
and we could ask them if I mean, it would be probably June of next year, because that's typically when.
Well, maybe
run
they could
the-
add June of next year into it for the
Into
same
this year.
budget, you know,
Yeah,
and
we
then
could,
we worry about the rest later.
we can ask them for, is that the preference of council, or would the preference be to drop one of the 4 sample dates for this year?
Preference would be to get their advice, what they would suggest.
Yeah.
They're the experts.
They tell us what's best. That's why they're the experts.
You know what we need.
Yes.
So let's ask the experts what they need to do to
Sure.
get it to us.
So any other questions, concerns? Somebody prepared to move, we approve it, subject to some changes being.
I move.
A second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, 8.1 is a letter from Susan. So letters you get.
Yeah, so in short, I know we have our quarterly meetings with GIR. But this issue is, it's a big problem for these residents. And I thought I asked that it be put on the agenda just because maybe we can get it out in front. In short, between Endeavor Avenue, which is a municipal road, and I guess I'm not sure what the other road is. It's not the 329, but there's a little connector piece of dirt road, basically, that connects these 2 roads. And it was probably not much of an issue, originally prior to Endeavor. Now Endeavor is almost fully populated with residences, and at the end of it, they have the East River Shipyard, which is really, really growing and taking off. And this little piece of dirt road, Fleet Road, is just, it's like a moonscape. And they can't even get their cars through it. And I was asking, hopefully that council might just make a special request to TIR to take some action on this, please. It's not our road. But that's the request today.
Is there J-class roads?
No,
No,
Oh, okay, what's the class?
it's just some,
Just a-
whatever, yeah.
Just the road.
Yeah.
Do they plow?
Unclassified.
They plow.
Oh, it's their road. It's just, yeah, it's just a public road.
It's just this weird little chunk of dirt road that goes between like a chip seal road and a paved road, and it's bad. It's like,
Do they grade that when they grade our other roads, or it's on the list?
they do grade it, but it literally will last, when they grade it, it'll last about 2 or 3 days.
That's normal.
It's right back to being.
There's no base.
Well, all we can do is write them and ask them, bring it to their attention, ask them to address it.
Yeah.
And that's,
we can send it to a copy to the MLA, although I see they send a petition to her, but
Yeah.
we could.
well, send a copy of our letter, of course. we
To,
should.
our MLA.
Absolutely.
Somebody want to move, we do that?
So,
Second.
Discussion?
I'm
All
waiting
in
for you.
favor? Opposed, motion is carried.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna ask, is everybody here from the Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee that tends to be here? Okay, so let's move on to 6.1, Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee. Yeah. Well, I have read some of the materials.
Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. It's been what, 3 months or something since?
Been a while, yeah.
Thank you for your time this morning. I'm Robin McAdam, Vice Chair of the committee, sitting in for Garth Mangay, who we split up things. He talked to Lunenburg a couple of days ago, and so you get me here today. But mostly you get Blake McNeely from Coastal Action, who's going to run through the report from 2021's sampling program. Just as a reminder, we didn't do sampling in 2020 because of COVID. And a couple of things. Certainly want to thank council for the support for the program. I see this as a growing business for you.
Yes.
And that makes it interesting. But after Blake has provided his comments, I'll make a few other comments around sort of what we're thinking as we proceed with the program and what we're learning from it and where we go in the future. So anyway, over to Blake.
Sure thing. Is there a place I can plug in my presentation here?
Oh, you know what? It is,
It'll come up. Oh, great. Perfect.
Oh, there you go.
no, hold on, you gotta log in. It's a software you have to. So the instructions are right on there. So there's a website that you can go to.
Sure.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
So go on.
you can fix that up, okay.
Yeah. Or
Again, I'd look it
I'll
up.
just get somebody to come
Yeah.
for me.
That's better.
The Wi-Fi key.
In that council package too, as well as the.
Is it in the council package?
Yes,
Okay, I'll
we
just
have
bring
it.
it up. All right, I'll just bring
Right
it
in
up.
the newest version.
Okay, I'll just bring it up.
Sure.
That's all right.
That might be this one.
Um, Sorry. There. Oh, and I'm not on the screen. No, I'm not on the screen yet. 6303. There we go.
There you go.
All right, so,
You just tell her when you want the page to switch.
sure thing. So you may remember me from Fox Point Lake. It's gonna be a very similar presentation. I'm just gonna go through some of the most important parameters, discuss the levels and if there's any concerns. So Sherbrooke Lake is a very large lake. We monitor 4 different lake sites and several different stream sites, most of which are taken after a rainfall event. If you recall from the Fox Point Lake, we use the trophic state index as the main way to determine how productive a lake is. And when I say productive, I mean nutrients available for growth, vegetation, aquatic vegetation and algae. We also were given that probe that measures chlorophyll and phycocyanin levels, which we used quite a bit this year. And we also did a heavy metal sediment analysis. We did notice that that is improving. The levels of heavy metal are improving since 2019. Next slide, please. So the first one I'm going to speak about here is phycocyanin. And phycocyanin is, again, the pigment in blue-green algae. And the probe itself is able to measure the levels of phycocyanin present in the water when we take our samples. So based on these results, I converted the units to cells per milliliter. And there is a guideline set by the WHO for level 1 of warning would be anything over 20,000 cells per milliliter. And then their level 2 would be 100,000 cells per milliliter. And you can see on the graph, the stream sites being on the left, the lake sites being on the right. We didn't really ever approach anywhere close to that. So we're not in any, at the time of these samples, we weren't approaching anything close to an algae bloom. And again, just be aware that algae blooms can come and go within a day. So we're only out there once a month. So these are the samples and the results that we have at the time that the samples were taken. The next one here, we're just looking at the surface temperature. That red line there indicates the 20-degree threshold set by the Nova Scotia Salmon Association for cold water species like brook trout. They really need temperatures to be below that. You'll see the stream sites, only a few of them ever exceeded the temperature, but we did see very high temperatures on the lake for most of the year, up until September. Yeah, go to the next slide there, please. And then here looking at surface dissolved oxygen. The Canadian ministers of the environment set a 6.5 degree or 6.5 milligrams per liter threshold for cold water species, again, brook trout, that kind of thing. They all require a dissolved oxygen level above that. You'll notice there's no red line because we didn't even get close to those levels. We were very high, the dissolved oxygen levels at the surface. On all of our sites were looking great. So there's no concern there.
You're doing good so far.
Doing pretty good. And then here we're looking at the pH levels. That's the acidity of the water. And again, the Canadian Council of Ministries of the Environment has set a 6.5 level for most cold water species. But more specific to our region, the Nova Scotia Salmon Association has set a level of 5 pH specific for cold water species, because here in the South Shore, we tend to have lower pH. So you'll notice that most of our levels did fall below that 6.5, but only just slightly above that 5, level 5. So we are looking at fairly low levels of pH, which could be an issue depending on what other metals are present in the water. Next one there.
Is that why they used to put lime in lakes?
Exactly. Yep. So liming helps to increase the level of pH. And then here we're looking at total phosphorus. This is one of the main nutrients that algae needs to grow, and other aquatic species or aquatic plant life as well. So there's a threshold set by the Ontario Ministers of the Environment of 0.02 milligrams per liter. Anything over that starts to become an issue. That's when you want to start looking at some preventative measures. And you can see here, we didn't get anywhere close to that, except for in Lake 1, where 2018 and 2019, we were getting pretty close there in May and June, but the gray line there indicates the 2021 results, and we weren't anywhere close. We had very low levels this year. And then for the stream sites, there's a 0.03 milligrams per liter. It's slightly higher just because you tend to see more phosphorus in the streams. They're shallower, there's more inputs, there's more runoff. And again, the Sherbrooke River was the only one that ever really got close, and that was during our September sampling. Next, we're looking at total nitrogen. This is another one, another big nutrient required for blue-green algae, other algae blooms. There is a paper that we use by Dodds and Welch that they take a look at lakes and they determine what healthy levels of nitrogen are in the water. And they've set a guideline of 0.9 milligrams per liter. As you can see here from these graphs, we don't ever really approach that in any of the years so far. So we're looking pretty good for nitrogen. And then again, here, looking at the stream sites, we're getting pretty close there. And then in the stream sites, especially in September, Sherbrooke River seems to be one of the sites that has the most nutrients in it, both nitrogen and total phosphorus. And then here we're looking at fecal coliform and E. coli. So there's a threshold set by Health Canada, 400 colony forming units. That's the measurement we use to determine, just quantify the level of bacteria in the water. And their second threshold is at 1,000 colony forming units. Our lake sites were very low this year. We only ever registered 3 hits on our lab samples, all of which were 2 colony forming units. The rest went undetected by the lab. We did see some slightly elevated levels in the stream sites, however. That's more common, just again, shallower water, more runoff. And then here we're looking at our sediment samples. So we take sediment samples at lake sites 1, 2, and 4. We've been doing that since 2018 in Lake 2 and Lake 3, and then 2019 at Lake 1 and Lake 4. So you notice here the darker orange indicates an exceedance of a heavy metal threshold set by Nova Scotia. The lighter yellow indicates that level is being approached, but hasn't been quite met. And the white indicates nowhere near.
Yeah.
So you'll see here in 2021, the Lake Site 1, we've fallen out of that exceedance in arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury. Mercury is still slightly higher. We are approaching that threshold still at Lake 1. At Lake 2, you'll see a drop by almost half of the arsenic levels, completely out of the threshold at cadmium and lead and mercury as well. Mercury completely fell out of the exceedance level at all sites this year. Still a little bit higher than we'd like it to be though. And then Lake 4, we saw a drop in arsenic, cadmium, and again, mercury. So our sediments are overall, they've decreased, the heavy metals have decreased since 2019.
So, you know, the reason for that, or?
Yeah, that's because everything seems to be either improving or being at least not of a great concern. And I'm just wondering why that is.
Yeah, so I don't really have an answer for why the sediment might be improving. It could just be honestly where we took the samples. There's a very large deep spot in Sherbrooke Lake where most of the metals you'll find accumulating.
Yeah.
It could have been just simply that our dredge took a site from a location slightly different from the previous year. And then again, here we have the trophic state index. This is what we use to look at the overall productivity of the lake. And again, productivity meaning how much nutrients are available in the water column for things like aquatic plants and algae blooms. So we take a look at the Secchi disc, which is a round disc that we drop down in the water. When we see it disappear, we take a reading at what depth that happens at. Chlorophyll A, again, obtained by lab samples, and total phosphorus. We put those through equations, put them all together, and that gives us how productive the lake is. This year, we have dropped down into the oligotrophic level, which means it's the lowest of the 3 states that the lake can be in. So it's showing very low productivity in the lake, meaning we're not likely to see a lot of fresh or aquatic plants growing in abundance. There won't be a lot of nutrients available for algae blooms. That said, we're not 100% sure that nutrients are the driving factor behind algae blooms. We just actually had a bloom recently in the lake, despite having these low levels. So algae blooms are still a very present issue in the lake, despite what the trophic state index may tell us. And then just to cover quickly here, we did an algae pilot project this year where we took 7 different microcystin samples from various points in the lake. And microcystin is the toxin produced by blue-green algae. It's one of the 4. It's the most toxic of the 4. It's the most common, so that's why we test for it. And then we were looking to compare that to the results that the probe that was just recently given to us was, the phycocyanin chlorophyll probe. Luckily, all seven samples came back with no microcystin at all, so we weren't able to compare that. So what we did was we took our chlorophyll results from the lab and compared them to the chlorophyll results from the probe. We put that through a statistical analysis test, and unfortunately, we weren't able to make any statistically significant relation between the samples from the lab and what the probe is showing us. That's not to say that the probe is not useful, just the levels that we were dealing with were so small that it's likely they just weren't able to give us an accurate reading. So what we're going to be doing hopefully this year is we're going to be looking to propose a more robust algae monitoring program for Sherbrooke Lake come 2023. Hopefully that this can be adopted through many other monitoring programs. As you all know, we're pretty lacking right now in terms of algae prevention and monitoring and response. So as our conclusion here, Sherbrooke Lake has a generally good water quality. The Probic State Index assessment demonstrates an unproductive system that is unfavorable to algae growth. However, the threat of algae blooms still does exist in Sherbrooke Lake and the surrounding streams. The sediment quality also appears to be improving since 2019. Coastal Action is recommending that this project be continued at the same capacity as previous years, with the monthly samples scaled back to 3 samples over the course of the summer, rather than the 6 that we have done in the previous years. The Sherbrooke Lake Stewardship Committee will look to explore options for a robust algae monitoring program for 2023.
I get a general question.
Sure.
I mean, we're doing this and we're about to expand it, and I'm not opposed to any of that. But I guess primarily what we're doing is we're trying to determine whether the human activity on the lake is having these negative impacts.
Right.
So do we know what a lake that has no human activity on it? Do we have a sample of what's normal, I guess?
We actually don't have any baseline data for that.
Well, I'd like to have some.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause it's,
Let's do.
yeah. Well, I do actually think that it's like, you know, like what's normal?
Yes. Yeah, it would be nice to have a pristine lake that we could monitor and say, you know, we could compare other lakes to this, but you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know, there's an issue, we want to go.
I get all that, but I mean, I'd like to be able to compare what's going on and what human activity is doing to one that has nothing
Right.
going on.
Well, I know a lake where you could.
Well, I'm sure we have lakes that there aren't.
Which is a pristine lake, which you could monitor, but anyway.
Yeah, so that'll be hopefully what we're hoping to look for, the wider monitoring program that we're going to be exploring in the fall. We still have to determine how we're going to do that, what lakes we're going to look at, but we definitely want to have some level of baseline data from a more pristine lake that we can compare. Sherbrooke Lake, Foxman Lake, Stanford Lake, and we can make those comparisons.
Well, I don't know, I just,
What's
well,
an
yeah.
example, what's the spectacle pristine, what?
Well, no spectacle, there's that, well,
Just asking what ones.
a lake that has no homes on it, that has no, that's not used to any degree for recreational purposes. Somebody might take a canoe and go fishing or something, but yeah, so I mean, I just think it'd be worth taking a look at a lake like that and seeing what is that baseline.
I agree.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Sanford Lake.
Yeah, if you needed one, Zanson Lake, there's a point where you could have access
Great.
to test them.
Yeah, there's a variety of them out there, I know, because I hike to them, you know.
Yeah.
But
It's pretty pristine.
it'd just be something where, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but it just seems to me that it'd be useful information to know what are we trying to achieve.
And a lot of this could be from acid rain or whatever. A lot of
Which you
the-
can't do anything
No.
about. I mean, yes, you still want to know whether there's the dangers of blue-green algae and all that kind of stuff, but it's just, you know, what's normal without us being.
Yeah, we will look to include that in our more robust monitoring program.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's just something worth considering.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Anyway, nothing, you wanted to talk now afterwards?
Well, I think the committee has sort of the same questions in our minds as what you just raised, Gordon, that we seem to have a dilemma. The official report card on the lake comes back and says the lake's in great shape. And then, but we've had these increasing incidences of algae, which are of course concerning because of the risk of toxins in the algae. And the way the Nova Scotia Department of Environment has, at least historically, treated that. So they come and cause concern when algae is cited, issue water quality advisories. And at the same time that that's going on, and we are seeing more algae, we're getting a clean report card. So we're kind of confused. And we're wondering if we're putting council's money to the best possible use is obviously the important question. And there's other dilemmas. Testing for toxins has been difficult, and so samples. Well, first of all, you got to chase the algae. So somebody sees it, and then you dispatch a boat and try and take a proper sample, and maybe the wind's broken up the algae bloom by the time you get there, you can't even find it. But anyway, as we've chased, we've been lucky, as you saw, there hasn't been toxins in the samples that have been taken. But it's there's more than one toxin, and the labs locally aren't set up as yet. They're working on it to scan for the four most common toxins. So the samples have been going as far away as Alberta to get tested, and so there's a delay in that feedback cycle from, well, do we have a problem? And of course, there's a communications issue, and the Department of Environment issues a season-long swimming or water quality advisory when they take steps. So, I think I just want to acknowledge that we have the same questions in our mind as what council does. Where does this take us? Are we doing the right thing? Are there uncontrollable factors or controllable factors? And so as a committee, we're over this year going to do further consultations with Coastal Action, as well as some folks with DAL are taking an interest. And it's kind of a regional issue. There was a conference maybe 6 weeks ago where our chairman attended and compared notes of what's going on in New Brunswick and PEI. And so it's not just Chester municipality that's wrestling with this alligator. And so we've got our eyes open to what's going on in other places. But it's a surprisingly, as you're seeing, complicated problem. So we're going to focus our efforts on consulting and trying to get our hands on useful research from other places as we think about what we should come back and propose for next year. Again, certainly appreciate council's support as we go through this.
Yeah, it is complicated, like in trying to sort of like, where do you go? How do you keep moving from year after year after year? I mean, when you look at this, you say, okay, well, we've been doing this for a while and things aren't.
The lake looks pretty good.
Yes, I mean, should we quit and start doing it every second year or whatever, like, and it's, because if we identify a problem, I mean, I would assume that our objective would be to go try and to address it somehow, but like, what can you address and what can't you address? That's, onward.
Well, I'll just speak to that briefly. As municipal government, one of our mandates, one of our core mandates is to regulate land use and development. So historically, we've relied on information from outside sources to help guide us in our policy. And, in recent years, we're learning, as most municipalities are, that fresh water and it's not so simple that you can just apply, say, a setback or whatever, the type of use, and it's more complex than just applying a setback or whatever, or some sort of buffer. So we're undertaking this, I think, at least from my perspective, I think we're undertaking these efforts to try to enrich the background we have as we try to move forward and regulate land use. Now, you have an existing lake with existing development. And whatever, if we change nothing and you have algae blooms or whatever, that's not desirable, obviously, but yeah, it's not for, I don't think it's our role to try to go solve those algae blooms necessarily. But we want to make sure that if there's future development on your lake, that we haven't allowed something that's going to worsen the situation.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason, and what drove it at your lake was, of course, the new public access. So that's what sort of drove that. And just as earlier in this conversation today, we were talking about Stanford Lake. And the reason why we want to get some baseline data, because we know there are proposed developments and there's going to be increased development pressure around Stanford Lake as Chester develops out that way. So we want to understand that in advance. And I wish that even we had data from your lake from 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, that would be very helpful. We don't have that. We have the opportunity with Stanford Lake to now at least put a stick in the ground at one point. So, you know, helping you to manage your communications, or like when we put swimming bans and stuff like that, that's, to me, that's the jurisdiction of the province. But land use is ours, and we want to make sure that we don't allow land use in your lake, around your lake, that's going to detrimentally affect those habitats and also the enjoyment that you guys have now.
No, that's, yeah.
Yeah, no, all well said. It is complicated from a jurisdictional issue because and you see this in every part of your business, where the province doesn't step up, the municipality ends up paying in some fashion. So you lose, the province doesn't do a good job on environmental protection, then it hurts your business, so to speak. Your resources can get degraded. And so that's the situation we're wrestling with. Is it's been interesting. The province appears, and I don't know if you saw the article maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago in the Herald, there was quite a statement from the province around this issue. And they seem to be saying now, when a bloom is spotted, you wouldn't want to dive into the middle of the algae, but you're probably okay in the rest of the lake. So that's felt to me like quite a shift in messaging from the province. But it doesn't really answer the question, why are we getting algae and how likely is it to be harmful? And that's what's sort of in the back of everybody's minds as we muddle our way through this.
Okay, yes, Tina.
Two things. Just curious, do you have any comments or feedback on how the discussion went, and maybe similar to ours here today, with the District of Lunenburg Council that took place a few days ago? I certainly could go online and look at their meeting, a video probably, or the recording. Same similar discussion that we're having here today, Blake?
I think we're seeing a lot of frustration with the province just across the board. Because, you know, like Robin said, it is kind of falling on your plate a little bit when it should be the province dealing with this. So the same sentiment was shared with Lunenburg as it was here in Chester. You know, we wish that the province would do more. But again, we're doing what we can. So.
And second thing would be, certainly there are factors that we can't, and variables thrown into the equation that we can't control. I guess in a way we can. We're talking acid rain, so we as citizens, we certainly can around the world. But in terms of the residents and the property owners and the associations that are organized, like the property associations on the lake, Robin, do you find that certainly an increase in the education with your, I'm guessing you do newsletters and you certainly have regular meetings, but just maybe something that we did 30 years ago that we're not doing now as boaters, people, you know, obviously traveling around with their boats and different things, and what we may be carrying the residents in terms of the care of your lawns, things like that, like that might add to the, I'm not talking blue algae necessarily, but just overall the unhealthiness, if that's not even the word, but of water, like the residents, the landowners, the people? Are you finding an increase in awareness?
I think it's coming. I don't think you can do too much of it. So part of what was in council's package was a 2-page summary of Blake's findings. And it also has the messages that you referenced, Councillor Connors, about things that the residents should be doing to protect the lake. And so I think there's growing awareness, but there's still people doing things that aren't helpful to the lake. And so we need to keep that up. I think that's quite important. So getting this information out and getting it up on the website and the associations continuing to get word out is quite helpful. But there's always, we just had a discussion about how difficult it is to connect cause and effect here and what, what's going on. And so there's room for people to doubt and be dubious and therefore not change their behavior. So we've got to keep working at it.
Anyone else? Questions, comments?
I'd just like to ask, so with all the data that you have, and in your professional opinion, so is algae bloom the biggest problem that you encounter?
Yes.
So if that being the case, how do you treat that? Is there something proactively you can do?
Yes, so there's, right now we're seeing a lot, especially on Fox Point Lake, a lot of hardening of shorelines. So building up large rocks or building your lawn straight to the water's edge, fertilizing, that kind of thing. All those fertilizers are running straight into the lake, and that would feed a bloom directly. So what we're encouraging with our 2-page report there is planting a natural shoreline, some natural plants you could put in there, not having just the lawn that you fertilize all the time. You can still take care of it without fertilizing, but we're finding a lot of anthropogenic effects from property development, just people wanting to make their shorelines look nice.
So you're saying the rock wall is
So
a
that
negative thing?
it makes it easier for all those nutrients to run off. A natural barrier will actually help to absorb some of those nutrients before they hit the lake.
Yeah.
So as natural as we can get it is ideal, but a lot of people want nice lawns, so.
Yeah.
So I
But
feel
yeah,
like,
well, that's that buffer zone that we're. that we
well, that's
often
right,
talk
it ties
about,
into what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a good advertisement for what your August 4th public meeting.
Exactly,
is,
6:30
is
here.
about.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in.